Okay, we are back on the B175 Peter's engine, and we're straight into it today. No intro. We had the story in the last episode, so we're just going to get straight into it. If you haven't watched part one, now would be a good time to go back and watch it, because you will get the full story of why this engine is here and what part I am playing in the bringing back to life of a Bantam that has been out in the wilderness for over 40 years. But yeah, if you haven't watched part one, now would be a good time to go and do that. So the story so far then, the piston is very, very stuck in the barrel. However, attempts to free it have not been successful. And the reason why they haven't been successful is because I've concluded that that is not the only reason that the engine won't turn over. When I inverted the engine in order to pour some freeing oil into the ports, basically the contents of a garden pond came out of the bottom end. So I think we can safely assume that the bottom end has been sitting full of water, that the rotating aspects of the bottom end, the bearings, will be locked solid, probably rusted solid. So if the bottom end will not turn, there's no means to free the piston by the conventional method of trying to push it back down the bore, because if it can't turn, it's got nowhere to go, and you will just do damage. Now, what methods have I used so far? Well, I've used the time-honoured acetone and ATF freeing oil. Yeah, that hasn't worked. It hasn't gone anywhere. And I've used a pushing tool. This is a bearing puller. And basically I used this element of the bearing puller, a piece of aluminium with a center drilled in it to accept the center of the bearing puller, and I used two steel washers that I turned up. Basically, this spanned the head studs. We had the two big washers, and then we tried to force the piston back down the bore with our aluminium packet interposed. Nothing doing, and you get to a point where you think, I've used enough force. I'm not going to use any more force because clearly this is going nowhere. And as I say, I've concluded that the bottom end is completely locked, so we're not going to get anywhere. We can't pull the barrel off because the piston rings are frozen. We can't push the piston down the bore because the bottom end is frozen. So we have but one course of action left open to us, and that is to strip the engine down, part the cases, and we'll take the crank, the barrel, the piston out as one assembly, and then we will deal with it away from the cases. Either split the crank to free the connecting rod and then push the piston out, or we'll just push the piston out and catch the crank underneath the press. But either way, the bottom end has, got some nasty surprises waiting for us, and we'll see how we get on with the barrel and piston. I'm still, I wouldn't say optimistic, but I'm still hopeful that if we can get the piston out of the barrel reasonably easily once we're not fighting against the crank, there's always a possibility that we might be able to save them. If not, it will be rebore and a new piston. So as you can see, we've got clutch side up. We're going to take all the drive side components out, flip over, remove all the casing screws, and part the cases. So that's what we'll do. I have been around with the impact driver. Not one of those battery-powered things, a good old-fashioned hammer-powered thing. And I've cracked all of the casing screws on both sides. Two I had to drill out, an easy out, and I had to make a long-reach easy out by welding an easy out to a socket. But more of that later. We'll talk about easy outs, and some people hate them. Some people say they're a load of rubbish. My opinion on that is you're entitled to your opinion. but I think you're not using them within their design limitations. And I've used these things for getting on for 40 years in my career, and I've had good success with them, providing you use them within the design limitations. They're not, you know, they don't possess any magic powers, and they do have limitations. But anyway, too much waffle, not enough action. So let's get in there and have a look at the drive side components. And I dropped the oil out of this thing, and some of my penetrating, because I filled the crankcase up with penetrating oil, basically until it was coming out of the inlet port. And I did that purely to try and get the bearings a little bit freer for when we try to separate them from the crankshaft. But when I dropped the oil out of the gearbox, clearly some of my penetrating oil had seeped past the seal into the gearbox, but there was oil in there. There was definitely motor oil in there. So I'm hoping that everything, you know, away from the bottom end will be good, or reasonably good at least, and we'll just have to worry about, wow, that's a long one. We'll just have to worry about the bottom end, and the gearbox will kind of look after itself. But we'll see. We'll see. You'll notice that I've left the points cam on because it serves to protect the end of the crankshaft. On these 4-speeders with the points cam on this side of the crankshaft, they've got a really delicate little taper. When you undo the screw for the points cam, it acts as an extractor and it actually parts the taper, and then you've got this delicate little taper that's really easily damaged. So yeah, we need to look after that. Don't know what ignition Peter's planning to run, but if he wants to keep it original, we need to keep that taper in good condition. Okay. Doesn't want to come off. Just going to go around in a minute. Make sure that I've got all the screws. Yep, got all the screws. Just a good 50-year-old gasket. It's fallen off with bits of wood. Right, let me get this cover off, and right, I'm back with you. I'm going round with my plexiglass scraper wedgie type thing. There appears to be some sort of sealant. Now, I don't think Mr. BSA used some sort of sealant, so I wonder if it's had a leak. Or, horror of horrors, after everything we've been saying, some bugger been in here before us. Maybe not, it might just be the gasket. There was definitely something rubbery around the forward edge. So maybe they've had a leak and they've stuck something in the gap, I don't know. Anyway, all will be revealed. Oh, lovely. Look at that. Okay. Looks to me as though someone has been forcing some sort of a rubber sealant into that part of the gasket there. So I stand by it with the first ones. Someone's just been trying to cure a leak from the outside, I think. But feast your eyes, guys. Lovely condition. A little bit slack, but not terribly so. Let's have a quick look at the casing. Telltale Bantam primary chain carnage. See if we've had any of that. And what I mean by that, if you're not familiar with these engines, when the primary chain gets super slack, it starts running along these bosses in the casing. Sometimes even gets low enough to start eating away at the casing down here, but usually you see a little nibble here. But all looks good. And the clutch end float as well. Another thing on Bantams, when the clutch end float goes, you get a like what my fingers described in the oil there. You get a witness mark on the casing because the clutch is basically moving in and out and munching its way through the casing. But no such evidence on our supposed 12,000 mile engine, which everything I'm seeing about it makes me think it's true. No massive dent in the middle of the clutch centre where somebody's got it wrong when they've been trying to disassemble the clutch. So yeah, I'd be willing to say that it's never been apart. Now we've got the usual Bantam hand fistery. Primary sprocket looks beautiful. You can still see the machining marks on it. And yeah, the clutch looks fantastic. So, doing it again, I'm rabbiting on. We need to get the clutch disassembled. Well, we'll get the primary chain off, get the clutch disassembled, and kickstarter mechanism out of the way. Primary sprocket removed, and flip her over and do the other side. Actually, I think I'll take the clutch apart now with the chain still connected, take advantage of the fact that this is locked solid, and it'll give me something to work against. So let me grab some tools and we'll crack on. Right, I've got some bits and bobs. Let's get the clutch apart. I've got you on the overhead. It's not a very good overhead, but hopefully, if I don't get in the way too much, you'll be able to see pretty much what's going on. I've just realised that I'm going to have to split the chain anyway, because I need to get the clutch separating too long. And it won't go on with the chain there. Not well. The proper BSA one probably would, but well, possibly, but mine won't. Okay, so we can take, so nice, take that off, and then we need to compress the clutch. So we need that. We do need to split the chain, so let's do that now. There's the split link along those pliers. Tight. It's good. There we go. Put that in a little magnetic dish. Okay, see if we can get this out, because what we can't do is run it around, because obviously we've got a frozen crank, haven't we? But where there's a will, there is indeed a way. So put that little bit into the magnetic dish and magnetise myself to everything that's in there. Oh, honestly. There we go. And put the chain in the plastic tub. Right, get the clutch part. So that goes on there. You see them, and Bones will cringe because he knows what I'm talking about. People press on that to try and compress the clutch. Well, that's not going anywhere. You need to press on this outer ring here that's got the springs emerging through it. You press on that, all you'll do is break it. So you need something, unless you've got the proper tool, you need something to span that sort of inner raised portion. And this is what I do. I'd use my trusty puller. Put a piece of plate on the top. Get that in there. Where is my ratchet? There it is. And wind it down. Down it goes. That's enough just to get the circlip out. There's the end of it. There it is. So just put my hand over it so it doesn't fire out and go around the workshop like a bullet. There we go. There he goes. Just feed him out. Then we can carefully take the tension off. I hope I'm not getting in the way too much. Just check the view. Yeah, you can kind of see, can't you? Don't need that bit anymore. Get the cover off. There's our springs. All of this looks absolutely brand new. It's beautiful. So good news. There's the mushroom. Clutch pack. A couple of little bits of corrosion there, look. A little bit of condensation that's got in. But nothing to worry about. The clutch plates, let's have a look at the steel plates. They might have a little bit of, yeah, they have, look. Bit of marking, but nothing to worry about. All pretty good, all things considering. Oh. Got a lock nut. Okay. tight. Get the right tool for the job, rather than end up throwing myself prostate across the bench. It'd be entertaining, but it wouldn't be fun for me, I'll tell you. There we go. All pretty good. There's our thrust bearing. See if we can lift that out carefully. Thrust plate. Let's have a look at the back of this. That looks in good nick. However, I will note that the spring cup has fallen off. That's supposed to be retained behind the circlip. That's supposed to sit on there behind that circlip and retain the spring. There's an assembly for the Kickstarter ratchet. It's all, basically these things wear out. Not the greatest of designs, I can't get it off now. Not the greatest of designs. You're reliant on a thin sort of area of that cupped washer to retain the spring, like that, behind the circlip on there. And when that wears, it pops off. I mean, the Kickstarter will still work, all the spring tension's still there, but it's not ideal. It's supposed to be retained. And, you know, probably took less than 12,000 miles for that thing to wear through and pop off, so it just shows you what a flawed piece of design it was. But anyway, we'll get a new one when it goes back together. Okay. Oh, look at that. Absolutely nothing wrong with the gearbox by the feel of it. We'll know more when we get in there, but yeah, I can't foresee there being anything wrong with it. Unless there was something wrong with it when it was laid up, but we've gone through the gears in the last episode, so it should be okay. Kickstarter mechanism with the anti-wear shim present and correct. So just got to remove the points cam, remove the crankshaft nut, and get the puller, pull the sprocket off. So I will do that, and then I'll come back to you. We'll flip the thing over and attack the other side. Right, I found something, not a very significant something, but a something nevertheless. Let's try and get this into the camera so that you can see it. A chip. And I found this chip in the bottom of this oily puddle here in the crankcase. And if Bantams were fitted with a mag chip, you know, a mag plug, it would have been in there because it is metallic. And it appears to be the edge of a gear tooth. So for all me saying the gearbox is perfect, which it does feel rather good, and all the gears selected, but obviously we've not tried it on the move. It might be insignificant, but at the same time it might be significant. So when we get the gearbox apart, we'll be looking for chipped pinion. Is it enough to cause a problem? Possibly, possibly not. We don't know. But we know this Bantam went off the road at some point in 1977. Could it be because it was jumping out of gear or something like that? Would that cause the gearbox to jump out of gear? Well, I suppose it depends whereabouts it's come from. But who knows? Maybe Reginald got tired of riding to the gasworks every day and having the gearbox jump out of second or something. Who knows? I've completely assumed there that the person that wrote it was called Reginald, and the idea that he worked at the gasworks is pure speculation. But there you go. We know it was laid up for a reason. We don't know what the reason was. This does look a little bit small, really. But you just never know. You just never know. It may have caused malfeasance enough to, you know, make him park it up and think about looking at it later, and later never came. Who knows? But we'll get in there and we'll find out what's going on. I maintain that we are the first ones to come into this gearbox because that rubbery sealant that I found is just here. So I think they've had a leak from the gasket here and they've just smeared some gasket sealant on the outside and sort of poked it into the crevice, as it were, because there's certainly no evidence of any gasket sealant anywhere else. That's just old gasket there that's stuck to it. And yeah, everything, you know, everything looked. The gasket certainly, you know, was unbroken. So that's what I think has happened. So anyway, need to get this pinion off, but I've lent my small 4-inch pinion puller to someone, so I need to go and get it back. So there'll be a short break. You won't notice it. It will be seconds for you, but it will be overnight for me. So I will come back when I've got the tool. Okay, it's been seconds for you. It has been an evening and a day for me. And as you can see, the primary sprocket has been removed. And I did get my little puller back. However, quite why I didn't think of this in the first place, I ended up using my bearing extractor because my my little puller was just, you know, I'd have ended up breaking it. It wasn't man enough for the task. So just reach over. Got the big guns out. And even with the big guns, it didn't want to come off. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I don't think this engine's been apart. Maybe I've mentioned it too many times. Anyway, it was, you know, properly stuck on there. So, Dino's top tip number 1 is sometimes shock is better than force. So I just give it a couple of quick blips with the whizzy gun, and it came free. Don't, you know, I wouldn't just keep grollying down under power, because all you're doing is increasing the force. Whereas if you use little short blips and give it a shock quite often, it will come free. Dino's top tip number 2 for removing stubborn taper fit items is this stuff. It's supposed to freeze the component and then you know, shock freeze it's called, but I don't find that works particularly well for me. But what I do find is that the penetrant that it contains is quite good, and it gets into places, and it certainly got down the taper. I watched it disappear. So that just helps to prevent anything galling when it comes off. And then finally, Dino's top tip for crankshaft component removal number 3 is don't forget to make yourself a little quill protector for the end of your shaft, so that when you put your the forcing screw from your extractor, you're not bearing on that delicate little taper. That, I mean, if you used that directly on the taper, yeah, it would make a mess of it. So quickly spin up your little, or get somebody to do it if you haven't got a lathe, little protector for the end of the shaft, and yeah, you won't ruin it, which is half the battle, really. We're trying not to damage anything. The only damage in this engine will be what, you know, the environment and time has created, and if we tread lightly and we take our time, we won't do any more harm taking it apart. So I'm going to flip it over, and we'll have a look at the other side. We'll just switch you off a second while I mop up that oil. Otherwise it'll go everywhere. Different view then. Got it flipped over. Got something underneath to catch the little dribbles of oil that are still coming out of the gearbox. And as you can see, I've removed the rotor. There's a crank seal underneath. And turning into a bit of a midden in here. I'm going to have to tidy up. Yeah, there's our gearbox sprocket. And this is the thing that is a bit of a conundrum to me, because everything else on this bike, on this engine rather, I've not seen the rest of the bike, but everything on this engine so far has been very much sort of convincing of the 12,000 miles on the odometer. Apart from this sprocket that I appear to not be able to stop spinning, it is absolutely goosed. That thing there, it looks like something out of Peter Pan, you know, something that you'd find on the end of a pirate's arm. Yeah, completely hooked over, worn, really bad, quite frankly. So I don't know if it's done its 12,000 miles with a over-tensioned chain with no lubricant, but anyway, that sprocket is absolutely creamed. There's a little rubber thing on the clutch push rod. There is the clutch push rod with lots of furry stuff around it. But what I'll do is I'll whip off the sprocket, pull all the casing screws out, and we'll see if we can split the cases. I'll switch you off while I do those bits, because it won't be very interesting for you watching me taking all those screws out. Oh, before I do that, we were going to talk about drilling out screws, weren't we? Alright, let me just see if I can find it. Let's have a rake through all these millions of tools that I've got out to find what I'm looking for, as the song goes. Tell you what, I'll switch you off for a second and I'll bring you back when I'm actually ready to. Okay, another quick Dino's top tip, and I don't normally do these kind of things in my videos. I don't really do a how-to, but I'm going to on this occasion because somebody might find it interesting or useful. You remember I made a long reach easy out by welding the easy out to a double depth socket, and that was to get into these screws here at the mouth of the mouth of the crankcase where the cylinder barrel fits. And there's two screws in there, and they were super tight, and I just couldn't get them out, so I had to drill them. And I used an easy out. And a lot of people really don't like these things and say they're useless and they're fit for the bin and all the rest of it. However, if you use them within their parameters, they're not, cure all elixir or anything like that. They do have their limitations, but as long as you keep to those limitations, you do all right. So I've just put that screw in there just for now. It's it's not stuck or anything. This isn't a very good demonstration really, but I might be able to demonstrate the techniques that I use at least. So it's drilled. I normally drill it 3.2, 3.3, or 8th if you're working with imperial drills. and you've got to get it dead center, or as dead center as you possibly can. And with a cross point screw, that's much easier because you've kind of got a center to go off. But you know, with other types of screws, not so much, and you need to get it, you know, center pop it or eyeball it, just sort of, you know, spot drill it to start with and then go in. But you know, you need to get it central, otherwise you're going to be coming out the side. So we've drilled down to a decent sort of depth, get our easy out. Now if we just go at it and start trying to turn it, we're only going to be in, you know, a couple of millimeters, and it's not going to do anything. So what I do is I get it in. It's turning. It's not, oh my goodness, not a very good demonstration, but we'll do our best. Let's pretend it's stuck in there. So just hold it nice and square and just gently tap it in and be turning it in the direction that you want it to go, and it will spiral itself in. So now it's in there, and you've got to be really careful that you don't put any side load on, because these things will snap. They're like a drill bit. Now, put whatever your preferred device to turn it is. It's actually, if you've got a T-handle rather than a ratchet, it's actually a little bit better, but we'll use a ratchet for the purposes of the demonstration. And then you just really want to be just sort of feeling the torsion in the tool, because this thing will twist like a drill bit does. You know, it will twist and come back, twist and come back. And so you're just kind of feeling out that twist. Nothing doing. All right. If you can get some heat on it, if you can get a torch in there, get the housing warmed up. If you're in an area where you can't use a torch, like in my job on aircraft, you know, you'd never work again if you used a gas torch. They'd throw you out. You can use a heat gun, a powerful heat gun. Get it nice and warm. Get your penetrating fluid on there. And then get back in there. Just testing the torsion. Going a little bit more, a little bit more, and a little bit more. And eventually, you'll get a ping. And what I sometimes do as well, just as I'm testing it, if I feel like it's maybe working its way out, I'll just tap it and turn it. Tap it and turn it. And eventually, it will go ping, and you'll be able to wind your screw out. And now, they were absolutely frozen, those screws in there. And I managed to get them both rather, with that technique. So, if it feels like it's going to snap, it probably is. It's time to back off. And if you can't get it at all with this thing, then you know you might have to drill it out a little bit further, use a slightly larger one if the bolt's big enough. Or sometimes, you know, you just have to drill the fastener out completely and pick out the thread. But if you are careful, patient, and you know you don't go bananas, you can have surprising results with these things. And the good news about these things is you can get into places with them. Those sort of short ones that have a really short, stubby tip, I know they're quite robust, but you try and get them, you know, into a recess or into a housing or something, you really struggle. But with one of these, you can get in there. And I've waffled on enough. So I'm going to switch you off, remove the sprocket, remove the casing screws, and we will adjourn for a minute or two while I do that. Right, I've had a few days away, quite a lot going on at the moment in my world, so not been in the workshop and not been doing much to Peter's engine. You can see I've got it in the engine stand, and I've made up some threaded adapters. We've got these pieces of hexagon steel with an M8 thread down the middle there, and we've got a stud on the other end, which is quarter cycle, which is what these later Bantam cases are threaded. Now, that's a school day for me, because I always thought there were unified threads on the later ones, but they're cycle. So there you go. The earlier one, my D7, is BSF. But anyway, yeah, bit of learning. So anyway, made up these pieces so that we can use a puller, and we're going to use M8 studs to locate the puller, and then I've got an M14 forcing screw from another puller kit that I'm going to use, and that's going to do the work. Let me just take you over to the milling machine. So excuse the dodgy camera work. We're going over now. Try not to get seasick. Okay. Get you better position. There you go. So over on the milling machine, I have got a piece of, can't remember how thick, let's measure it. Let's have a look. Nothing ready. 5mm, piece of 5mm plate. Drilling some holes in it at the moment. There and there for our adapters that you've just seen. So that's where the puller studs will go through. And then in the middle, we'll have a hole bored for our M14 forcing screw. Let me just take you over to the lathe for the next piece of the equation. Again, hold on tight. There we go. Over in the lathe, we've got a piece of shouldered round bar that I've turned up with a 12.5mm hole up the middle, ready for tapping M14 1.5 pitch. So that's going to be our forcing screw collar. I might secure that with a circlip, I'm not sure yet. I might glue it with sparks, we'll see. Not quite decided. But that's going to be our puller anyway. So let's go back over to the engine. Get you settled in there. There you go. Yeah, so it's proving to be quite obstinate. There's rust between the main bearing and the crankshaft. We've got some stuff in there, some magic potion doing its stuff. And there's two dowels here and here on a Bantam, and they generally tend to stick as well because they're probably just mild steel, I would think, and they're into aluminium, and they tend to freeze up with a bit of galvanic corrosion. I can't imagine that we've got any problems here. That's been full of oil. It looks good. I think that the main shaft bearing will come off easily, but yeah, this is where our main problem resides. So we're going to have to, draw that off and hope for the best, really. But there's no victory without a worthy opponent, is there? So we will give it our best shot. Get these crankcase halves separated, and then we can take the crank, the barrel and the piston out in one go, and we can work on those as a separate entity and get them freed up. But yeah, unless we can split these crankcase halves, we're not going to be getting much further. So the manufacture of a robust tool is justified. So that's what we're going to be doing, and we will move on from there. Summertime, and the living is easy. We're on it with the Retromeccanica patent Bantam puller, and we're getting somewhere, guys. I've warmed it up, smoky hot around the bearing. I've warmed around the crankcase and cylinder barrel junction, and something is definitely happening. I'm just cautious of causing damage to the crankcases. Got plenty of movement on that. Try and draw it off nice and evenly, and but it's the bearing that's causing us the problem. The main bearing is where the fight lies, so we might have to warm it up again. But I can feel it, it wants to live again. So we've got a gap opened up now, probably about 2 to 3 millimeters. So I'm going to switch you off, guys. I'm going to warm it up again. We'll just keep doing this. We'll just keep repeating the cycle. Warm it up, move it a bit, warm it up, move it a bit. And I'll bring you back when we've got something to show. But he wants to live again. I can feel it. So we're making progress. Okay, I brought you back and it has gone pop. And we are now in the last few throws of removing this recalcitrant crankcase. And there is what can only be described as massa falling out the bottom. And I have to say that this is... I mean, I've done some tough things in my career, but motorbike crankcase wise, this is probably the toughest one I've done. Or the most stubborn one I've done, shall we say. Let's put it that way. Oh my word. Okay. You can probably see that what we suspected is true. Just a few bits of broken gasket tumbling down. What have we got? Crankshaft, sort of bottom end area, very, very corroded. And then from the sealed portion there, back, the gearbox looks pretty good. Obviously we'll be hunting for the missing tooth, or the broken tooth. See where that came from, but yeah, I can't see any environmental damage in the gearbox due to the fact that it still had oil in it. So whatever oil they used back then was quite good, because it certainly looked after the gearbox. But as we know, the crank case was full of water, and yeah, the rod is absolutely corroded. So it's going to need a crank rebuild. Funny old thing. There is corrosion products completely filling the cavity. What I'm going to do is I'll bring you in for a handheld adventure, and we'll have a look at it properly. Let's just look at the other side of the... Oh, there's stuff coming out of there. Oh yeah, look at that. Should I get it in shot? As we suspected, bottom end toast, gearbox looks okay. But all that will come out. That ain't the problem. We just need to get the crank and barrel off as an assembly, which obviously, you know, I don't know what kind of an issue we're going to have pressing the other side out, but hopefully not too, well, hopefully not as bad as this side has been, but we'll see. Let me stop the camera, get you in close. Okay, handheld adventure. Let's get some light in there so you can see what we're dealing with. As you can see, corrosion products are completely, well, almost fused the crank to the crankcase, really. So no wonder it wouldn't turn, coupled with obviously the piston being seized. And we've got corrosion products completely chocked between two crankshaft halves. So, you know, 8 years, I think, sitting with water in probably for most of that time. You know, hardly expect anything else, really. Just hoping that there's enough of the crank left once we've got it cleaned up that we can do something with it, but we'll see. We can't make any judgments until we really get into it. can see the rod in there. Let me try and get the light in the right place. There you go. You can see the rod is pretty toasty as well. But like I say, we will reserve judgment until it's all completely stripped down. We've got everything cleaned out, and we can see what the damage is. And then go over to the gearbox, and it's positively spanky by comparison. Yeah, whatever oil they used back then certainly did the job, didn't it? And we just need to investigate where that piece of chipped tooth came from. And other than that, everything in there looks very, very promising. So as suspected, we've got a rather poor bottom end, and we've got a reasonably good looking gearbox. So next steps is to get the crankshaft out of the other crankcase half with the barrel and the piston all in one. Get all that lot separated and cleaned. Get the gearbox apart and inspect all the components. And then I'll be speaking to Peter, and it's his engine. He'll be making, he'll be calling the shots and moving forward from there. But I think that'll do us for this video. We've got the crankcase halves apart, and we've seen sort of the first glimpse of what. Right, well, we got there in the end, and we got exactly what we expected, really. A fairly toasty crank and bottom end, and gearbox, not too bad. The oil definitely preserved it. And I've given it a quick look over. I haven't examined it yet or cleaned it up. And it all looks pretty good. I couldn't find any evidence of the chipped tooth so far, but I will keep looking. I'll have to give it a really good look over. I mean, it is possible, I suppose, that somebody got in here first and fixed it, but we'll never know, really. If I can't find anything wrong with it, then maybe that is the case. Or, maybe it came from somewhere else. I don't know. But, yeah, gearbox, I think, will be good, and will do sterling service. The rest of it will get apart carefully, and I'll get back to Peter and tell him what's what, and he can make the decisions about what we do next. That's it for this video. Thank you very much indeed for all your support. It really does help. Those of you who have subscribed recently, welcome. Those of you who've been with me for a while, thank you for your continued support. It's hugely appreciated. At the moment, as a family, we're going through it a little bit. My son has to go into hospital this week, so we're up against it a little bit. But if you would keep us in your thoughts and prayers, that would be very helpful. So thank you very much. Yeah, that's it, really. Mind how you go, and I'll see you soon.